In the previous topic, we looked at how we were unable to make a copy of a JavaScript object by simply assigning it to a variable. That is because the variable simply contains a reference to the object, not the object itself. So we're simply assigning the same reference to both variables. Well, what if you need a second or third version of an object? How do you go about copying it without creating a new object from scratch that has the exact same data? Well, in JavaScript, we call this cloning an object. And I'll show you 3 methods for doing this. This is a technique that's frequently used in functional programming. All right, let's take a look at that. All right, here I have a simple object, not much to it, and we want to create a second version of this, a clone of this. So one way to do it is with the object.assign method. Now, the purpose of object.assign is to copy properties, enumerable properties, and properties that are owned by an object from one object to another. Well, if we copy those to an empty object, then basically we're making a copy of that object, a clone of that object that has the exact same data, but is a different reference. It has a different place in memory. So here's how we go about doing that. obj1 is what I'm going to call this new object, this clone object. And then we do object.assign. So this is a static method of the object constructor. So object.assign, and then we pass in the target object. Now we want the target to be an empty object. So we just pass in curly braces like that. And then we pass in the source object. Well, the source object is obj. Now if we go ahead and save that, and we'll take a look at it. I've got live server running on my HTML page here. And so we can take a look at obj, and we can take a look at obj1. They show the same data. Now let's see if we have the same problem that we had in the previous topic. If I do obj.number and I increment that, now obj has a number of 1, where obj1 still has a number of 0. So that works great for cloning an object. But that technique is probably not used very often because it's longer. It's longer than using the rest or spread operator. Now, the rest or spread operator we're going to tackle in more detail later on in this course because it does a number of things. It does a lot of things, but we can use it for this situation as well. And basically what we're going to use it to do is take this object here and we're going to spread out all of its properties into a brand new object. So the syntax for that would look like this. This is going to be obj2. We'll set that equal to a new object. Then inside of that object, we want to place obj. But we want to spread out all of this data that's inside of obj, all of those properties. And so we use the spread operator, which is 3 dots. We put that in front of obj. Now you can see how much simpler this is as opposed to object.assign, and it's easier to remember. And so that's probably why this is used more frequently. But we get the same results. So if I save that, come back out to the browser again, obj, once again, it's back to 0 because it refreshed. But if I do obj.number and then I increment that like we did before, now obj equals 1, obj1 still equals 0, obj2 still equals 0. So both of those are working for us. Now I need to show you a third method. And that's because of a problem we can encounter when we're cloning objects. And that's if there are children objects or children arrays. And I should mention this technique that I used for an object here would work for an array as well. We could do an array like this using the same technique, spread operator, and then the original array. And it would create a copy of that array, a clone of that array, that wouldn't be changed whenever we updated the array. So spread operator is very helpful. But there's one situation where it may not be, and that's where there's a child object or a child array. So let's say we have a settings property here, and that is actually another object. And inside of that we have a role, and we're going to set that to user like that. All right, now let's see what happens with these two, with obj1, obj2. We'll save that. Let's take a look at, or let's just go ahead and update obj number again, like we've done in the past. And obj1 still has the right number. It hasn't changed to 1. And obj2 as well. But look what happens if we update the settings. Now think about this. What's going to happen? Is this property here going to contain the actual object, or is it going to contain a reference? Well, it contains a reference, and that's why we run into a problem. So if I go ahead and update obj.settings.role and set that equal to admin, like that, now when I look at these three objects, if I open up obj, we can see it's admin. obj1, we can also see that is admin. And obj2, we can see that's admin. So object.assign and the spread operator does what we call shallow cloning. That means if there are children objects inside the object, it's not going to clone those. It'll basically just copy the reference that is there. That's called shallow cloning. Well, at times we want to do deep cloning. And there are libraries that have pretty complex functions for doing deep cloning. But there's also a simple way we can do that, which can save us a lot of trouble of creating one of those complex functions or using a library, because it will work in many of the situations that we want. And that technique is to take the object, convert it to a string, and then convert it back to an object. Now, the only way we can convert an object to a string and then convert it back to an object is if we use JSON. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's a way of passing objects with a string. We use it frequently when we're communicating with sites and we're getting data from that site. It will come down as a JSON string, and then we can convert it to an object because it's formatted in a way that allows us to do that. Well, there are some functions in JavaScript that allow us to convert an object to a string, and there are a function in JavaScript that allows us to convert a JSON string to an object. So if we take this object, convert it to a string, then convert it back to an object, we have a clone of it, and it will be a deep clone. It won't have the reference, it will have the actual data. Let's just see how that would work. So we'll do obj3, and we're going to set that equal to JSON. That's a JavaScript object that handles this, and it has a couple of methods. One is JSON.parse. Now JSON.parse takes a JSON string and converts it to a JavaScript object. Well, we need to supply it with a JSON string. So how can we do that? Well, there's another method in JSON, JSON stringify. This takes an object and turns it into a JavaScript string. And so we're going to do that with obj. And that will give us a JSON string to convert back to an object and place it in obj3. All right, let's do this one more time. We'll save this, jump out here. We'll do obj.number first. We'll increment that like we've been doing. Now obj has a 1. But let's also update the settings. So obj.settings.role, and we'll set that equal to admin like we did before. So if we look at OBJ, the number's 1, the settings admin, OBJ1. The number is 0, so that's good, that cloned, but the settings admin. The same would be the case with OBJ2 using the spread rest operator. But if we look at OBJ3, the number is 0, so that's good. The role in settings is user. It did not change to admin. So this does a deep clone. This method here does a deep clone, and is a simple way to do that. When an object has a child object or a child array, that is how we can take care of that. All right, let's move on to the next topic.